As we journey through the Psalms of disorientation, we're reminded of the seasons where life feels dark and we don't know the way through. When God feels silent, when we experience guilt or betrayal, and today, what to do with anger and injustice. You don't have to look too far to find injustice in our world. Just in the news over the last couple weeks, the drowning of Nolan Wells, a youth pastor found abusing teenagers, ICE raids and the death of Juan Sebastian Guerrero and Lorenzo Salgado Arrojo. There are things happening in the world right now that should make you angry. And chances are there are also things happening in your own community and your own family and your own life that make you angry too. A child who cannot get a fair start because of the neighborhood she was born in. A worker cheated out of wages that they've earned. A court system that seems to bend toward whoever can afford the better lawyer. A friend who did everything right and still lost everything because somewhere at this very moment, someone is taking advantage of someone else and getting away with it. And if none of that stirs anything in you, I would suggest that something in you has gone numb, and let's have coffee and talk about that. But if it does stir something, if you feel that restless, clenched jaw feeling when you see the corrupt prosper and the vulnerable suffer, then you already know the space of Psalm 94. The question that this psalm puts in front of us isn't whether you feel that anger, it's what you do with it. Do you swallow it until it turns into despair? Do you let it curdle into cynicism? Do you numb it out? Or do you do what the psalmist does? Take it unfiltered to God. Because that's where Psalm 94 begins. So let's hear Psalm 94 together. O Lord, the God who avenges, O God who avenges, shine forth. Rise up, O judge of the earth, pay back to the proud what they deserve. How long will the wicked, O Lord, how long will the wicked be jubilant? They pour out arrogant words. All the evildoers are full of boasting. They crush your people, O Lord. They oppress your inheritance. They slay the widow and the alien. They murder the fatherless. They say, the Lord does not see. The God of Jacob pays no heed. Take heed, you senseless ones among the people. You fools, when will you become wise? Does he who implanted the ear not hear? Does he who formed the eye not see? Does he who disciplines nations not punish? Does he who teaches man lack knowledge? The Lord knows the thoughts of man. He knows that they are futile. Blessed is the man you discipline, O Lord, the man you teach from your law. You grant him relief from days of trouble till a pit is dug for the wicked. For the Lord will not reject his people. He will never forsake his inheritance. Judgment will again be founded on righteousness, and all the upright in heart will follow it. Who will rise up for me against the wicked? Who will take a stand for me against evildoers? Unless the Lord had given me help, I would soon have dwelt in the silence of death. When I said, my foot is slipping, your love, O Lord, supported me. When anxiety was great within me, your consolation brought joy to my soul. Can a corrupt throne be allied with you, one that brings on misery by its decrees? They band together against the righteous and condemn the innocent to death. But the Lord has become my fortress, and my God, the rock in whom I take refuge. He will repay them for their sins and destroy them for their wickedness. The Lord our God will destroy them. The psalm opens with a title for God that we don't hear very often. The Lord is a God who avenges. O God who avenges, shine forth. That's not a name for God that we use very often in our worship songs or our prayers. We tend to prefer titles like Shepherd, Comforter, Prince of Peace, and all of those names are true to the character of God. But I believe that the psalmist reaches for a different name here because he needs a God who is not merely gentle, but just. He needs a God who will rise up and do something about the proud who crush your people and slay the widow and the foreigner and murder the fatherless. The psalmist's faith here is strong. He doesn't doubt God, and this injustice around him does not cause his faith to shrink. Instead, he is confronting the God that he already believes in, a God that he trusts is capable of justice, but from where he's standing, a God who seems painfully slow to act. I recognize this feeling quite frequently these days, more than I want to, if I'm being honest. I haven't lost my faith in God's existence, but some days I find it hard to believe in God's concern. Some days it's easier to think that God has checked out of the injustice around us, that God sees it and shrugs or looks away. But how we come to God when we see injustice in our lives and in the world around us matters. Because if you decide that God no longer cares, even if you didn't mean to, it will change how you pray and how you walk in the world. It will change how much hope you are willing to carry into broken places. God is not indifferent to evil. And this is important to remember when the wicked in this psalm operate as though God has left the building. The wicked say in verse 7, "The Lord does not see, God does not notice." And so the psalmist responds, "Does he who made the ear not hear? Does he who formed the eye not see?" These words are so logical, they almost sound sarcastic when we read them. You built the thing that hears. Do you think you can hide from hearing? And you built the thing that sees. Do you think you can hide from sight? When the wicked say that God can't see, the psalmist's response is essentially, that is the most foolish thing you could possibly believe about the God who invented perception itself. And this is where the psalm stops being only about them, the wicked, the oppressors out there, and starts pressing in on us as well, because there are two ways to live as if God doesn't see. One is the way of the oppressor, acting as though there will be no reckoning, no accountability, because no one is watching closely enough to matter. And we all do it even in small ways. We cut corners. We're not kind, we exploit a small advantage, all while quietly assuming it might not register with God. But there's a second way to live as if God doesn't see, and this does not belong to the oppressor, but to the one suffering. And that is living in the conclusion that because your pain has not yet been addressed, it must be invisible. That God has looked away from you. And that is a lie too. It is foolish to believe that God cannot see. Because God's justice will not just see you, it will sustain you when you suffer and when those whom you love are suffering. Verse 18, when I said my foot is slipping, your love, O Lord, supported me. The psalmist doesn't say, when my foot slipped, you fixed the ground. He says, your love held me up while I was still slipping. Justice has not been served, the wicked have not yet been dealt with, and at the moment this is written, the psalmist is still standing on unstable ground, and yet he wasn't standing alone. He remembers what has held him up before, and he remembers that he is supported. When things are not going well, it's easy to say that everything is fine. But this is bigger than being fine. This is acknowledging I am held even when things are not fine. The psalm doesn't end with justice arriving. It ends with trust. As the psalmist declares, the Lord has become my fortress. This is a difficult faith, an honest faith that can say who God is before the resolution that they're crying out for. A faith that says, I will trust God while this is still broken. So how do you and I hold on to God's goodness while we are still waiting for God's justice? The answer is not to stop feeling the wrongness of what is wrong. The psalmist never does this. He names the injustice in detail. I think the answer is this: we bring our anger to God rather than carrying it away from God. Don't let your anger become a slow leak that drains your faith dry. Instead, let your ache and your pain and your rage become your prayer. Because the question is never whether you are allowed to be angry about injustice. You are. Holy anger is not a sin. Jesus himself, walking into a temple that had turned a house of prayer into a marketplace that exploited the poor, did not shrug it off. He turned the tables. So the question that Psalm 94 leaves us with is this: is your anger driving you toward God or away from God? Anger carried away from God, anger nursed in isolation, unspoken, unprayed, will harden into despair, into numbness, into bitterness that outlives whatever caused it in the first place. But anger taken to God becomes prayer, becomes lament, becomes fuel for action, becomes a foot held steady on slipping ground. You don't need to stop being angry about what's broken in the world. The world needs you to notice, needs you to see, needs you to witness the reality that is taking place. But what the world also needs is for you to bring that anger to the God who can turn it into something new. Psalm 94, the rage you don't know what to do with. You know the theological answers: God's sovereignty and timing and mystery, the long arc of justice. You've even repeated them to other people, still trying to convince yourself that it's true. You've tried to be reasonable about it, but underneath those logical responses is something that doesn't feel logical at all. It feels like anger. It could be something you've watched happen to someone you love, an injustice that is so clear and so unanswered that the silence around it feels like complicity. A system that protected the wrong person, an institution that looked away, a person in power who took and never once faced the consequence that everyone watching knew they deserved. It could be something more personal, a wrong done to you that you did not deserve, something that rearranged your life while the person responsible went on as usual, and you've watched them go on month after month. And now you don't know what to do with what's living inside of your chest. The psalmist doesn't know what to do with it either, which is why he takes it straight to God. O Lord, the God who avenges, shine forth. Rise up, judge of the earth. Pay back to the proud what they deserve. This is not the prayer of someone who has processed their anger into something presentable with a bow. It's the prayer of someone so undone by what they have witnessed that the only thing they can do is bring it to the God that they believe has both the power and the obligation to act. The psalmist does not take matters into his own hands. He does not go quiet and let bitterness harden his heart. He does not numb himself against the injustice so that he can stop feeling it. He does not let his heart, once capable of being moved, slowly harden. Instead, the psalmist brings it to God. The anger that cries out turns upward as he prays. He refuses to accept that this is the final word, that the powerful will never be held accountable, that the suffering of the vulnerable is simply the way that things are. The psalmist's rage is turned upward as he cries out. It is the rage of someone who believes, against the evidence of the very moment in which he finds himself, that there is a God who sees, a God who has not forgotten, a God whose patience with injustice is not the same thing as indifference to it. Does he who formed the eye not see? And somewhere in this psalm, the anger begins to change. And like the other psalms we've read, the circumstances have not. The wicked are still prospering and the vulnerable are still suffering. But as he brings his anger to God, the psalmist finds an unexpected steadiness. When I said, my foot is slipping, your unfailing love, O Lord, supported me. The justice has not yet come, but he has been held. And being held is enough to keep going. You are allowed to be angry about the things that are worth being angry about. And you are allowed to bring that anger to God at full volume. What you should not do is carry it alone, is turn your anger inward, is let it turn into something that slowly poisons everything that is good in you. Pour it out, hand it over, let the judge of the earth be the judge of the earth. This is the most demanding form of trust. But on the other side of it, perhaps you will find what you need. Maybe not immediate resolution, but something more sustainable. The rootedness of a person who is being held. This week, may the God who formed your eyes and your ears remind you that you are seen and heard. May your anger rise up to God instead of hardening your heart. And may you feel the love that holds you steady, even while your feet are still slipping. Amen.